UK quality. Liz Truss destroyed Putin with firm statement as Moscow aggression toward Ukraine. Liz Truss has condemned what she called Russia's aggressive and inflammatory rhetoric against Ukraine, and warned any invasion would be a massive strategic mistake which would be met with strength. Speaking on Thursday, the Foreign Secretary said, "I condemn the Kremlin's aggressive and inflammatory rhetoric against Ukraine and NATO. NATO is a defensive alliance and Ukraine continues to show commendable restraint in the face of Russian provocation and aggression." She added, "Any Russian incursion would be a massive strategic mistake and would be met with strength, including coordinated sanctions with our allies to impose a severe cost on Russia's interests and economy. The UK's support for Ukraine is unwavering. The only way out of the current situation for Russia is through dialogue, and I welcome the fact that Russia has signaled it is willing to enter talks in January. The Russian government needs to de-escalate its activities and engage in serious discussions. Nevertheless, tensions along Ukraine's eastern border remain high amid reports of a Russian troops build-up. Germany and France called on both the Ukrainian government forces and Russia-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine to respect the restoration of a full ceasefire, their foreign ministries said in a joint statement on Thursday. Mr. Putin has insisted Russia wants to avoid conflict with Ukraine and the West, but needed an immediate response from the United States and its allies to its demands for security guarantees. Putin faced questions about the risk of conflict with Ukraine during a marathon annual news conference lasting more than 4 hours. On Wednesday it was reported Ukraine had undertaken military exercises using US-made Javelin anti-tank missiles in a conflict area with separatists to the east of the country, ratcheting up tensions with Moscow even further. Since 2019 Ukraine has received several consignments of munitions from the US, much to the anger of Russia. On Wednesday, the Interfax news agency reported Russia held its own military drills nearby. Su-30 fighter jets and Su-24 bombers from the Black Sea Fleet performed aerial refueling exercises over Crimea, the Black Sea Peninsula, annexed by Moscow in 2014. Also on Wednesday, top Ukrainian security official Alexei Davilov said 122,000 Russian troops were 124 miles away from his country's border. Mr. Davilov last week said Russia would need at least 500,000 to 600,000 soldiers at the border in order to keep the situation under control in the event of an offensive. Last week, Moscow presented the West with sweeping security demands, calling on NATO to deny membership to Ukraine and other former Soviet countries, as well as roll back military deployments in Central and Eastern Europe. Many of Russia's proposals, which would require the withdrawal of US and allied forces from Central and Eastern European countries that joined NATO after 1997, are seen as non-starters in the West. But Washington and NATO have said they will discuss the package with Russia early next year, aware that outright rejection could further inflame the crisis over Ukraine. But in separate remarks, Putin grew more heated when recalling how NATO had brazenly tricked Russia with successive waves of expansion since the Cold War, and said Moscow needed an answer to its demands urgently. He said, "We just directly posed the question that there should be no further NATO movement to the east. The ball is in their court, they should answer us with something." The US, European Union and Group of Seven, G7, nations have all warned Putin he will face massive consequences, including tough economic sanctions in the event of any new Russian aggression over Ukraine. Russia annexed Ukraine's Crimean Peninsula in 2014 and shortly after supported a separatist rebellion in the country's east, plunging relations between Moscow and the West to post-Cold War lows. The fighting in Ukraine's industrial heartland, known as the Donbas, has killed more than 14,000 people to date, according to Kiev. Putin accused Ukraine's government on Thursday of breaking its commitments under a 2015 deal meant to halt the conflict and refusing to talk to representatives of two breakaway regions there. He said his Ukrainian counterpart, Volodymyr Zelensky, had been influenced by radical nationalist forces. Zelensky, for his part, has said he is ready to talk with Russia in any format. The Kremlin has so far rejected any such discussions and repeatedly said it sees no point in any meeting without clarity on what the agenda would be.